Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hello everyone, it's Jesse Green here. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast. It's great to have you here as always. Now today we're picking up our Practice Success series and we're in part 2. And you remember that last week we spoke about setting goals. We spoke about having a plan, being intentional about the year so that you're really clear about what you want to achieve, and you said about building a strategic plan to get those things done in order to have the outcomes you want to achieve. And so you remember that we began the conversation by saying that all progress begins by telling the truth. And oftentimes that telling of truth is to ourselves. And so we wanted to begin the planning process by really evaluating where we are. So looking at the last 12 months and going, what worked really well? What didn't work so well, and getting real about that. And I asked you to go through an exercise to write about those things in technicolor detail. So rather than just bullet pointing and keeping it surface level, I wanted you to write in sentences and paragraphs, because when we start writing in that way, we start to bring out the juice. We start to get the description, the impact, and we can understand it beyond the surface level. And then I asked you to think about, what would need to be true for you to feel like 2021 had been a screaming success for you. And again, writing that in technicolor detail, how you'd be feeling, what you're thinking, what you're experiencing. And then, of course, we need to put some metrics in place. And I asked you to look at what metrics would need to be in place, where you are now in those same markers and so on. And then, of course, it's about building out a plan on a quarter-by-quarter basis, looking at the key projects or the big rocks, whatever you want to call them, and then looking at what actions and activities underpin that. And so if you haven't gone back and done those exercises yet, I'm going to encourage you to pause this episode and go back and do that, because in this 3-part series, we're going to be talking about different things that build on one another. And so in this episode today, part 2, we're going to be talking about who do I need to be in order to achieve these things. So this is based on a model called the be, do, and have model. And oftentimes we focus on the things that we want to have in our life, whether it's money, time, bits and pieces, whether it's material things, whether it's better relationships, whether, it's, spiritual contribution, whatever, all of those things we want to have in our life. But before we can have those things, we need to do certain things. And before we do certain things, we need to be the sort of person that does those sorts of things. So I want to talk about the be, do, have model, but focusing specifically on who we need to be. And of course, when it comes to who we need to be, we talk really using leadership as a framework for this. And I want to talk about that because we talk about leadership at 3 different levels. The primary level is, leading yourself. Who do I need to be myself on a day-to-day basis? If I'm just leading me, how do I need to show up? Then, of course, the secondary level of leadership is how do I lead other people in my team or other people in my life, family, whatever that may be, and how do I need to be to help and support them? And then, of course, the third level of leadership is developing other leaders. And that's really key, particularly if you're going to have a business that scales. Building a team and developing other leaders is a huge focus of your business life. And indeed, as you go from having a profitable business to a scalable business, your key focus really is about building teams and leading teams. So again, this leadership piece is really important, whether you're operating at the primary level, the secondary level, or the tertiary level. And of course, it all comes back to be, do, and have. So when it comes to leadership, we talk about taking the leadership pledge. Now, I've developed a model called the periodic table of leadership, which I developed some time ago. And the pledge is an acronym for PLEJ. So P is for personal leadership, L is for leading the way, E is for empowering people, and the J is managing the journey. So let's just go through each of these elements on the periodic table, and I'll describe them for you, and that'll give you some thoughts to really engage with and to start writing some notes with and thinking clearly about how it's going to impact your life and what you're going to be able to do and who you need to be. So if we think about taking the pledge and beginning with the P part of that, which, as I said, is personal leadership, it begins with understanding the concept of daring. And I love the concept of daring. And Helen Keller said, life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. And I'm a big fan of Brené Brown's work as well. And she talks about daring greatly. And daring is about being vulnerable. It's about daring to get in the arena. And it comes back to the Theodore Roosevelt poem called The Man in the Arena. Now, I'm not going to read it to you here, but if you've not read that, please go and read it. It is by far and away my favorite poem of all time. But it talks about not being the critic that counts, not the person who's sitting on the sideline watching the show. It's the person who's in the arena, the person who's getting their butt kicked, their ass handed to them, but still getting up and having another crack. And I think that's really important in life, is we've got to be able to dare. We've got to be able to step into the arena. And whether you play football or cricket or whatever it is, you'll know that when you take the field, you walk over the white line. And we need to be able to walk over the white line in our life, in our business, in every element. Because if we don't risk anything, and I'm not saying be careless with risk, but if we don't dare, we don't take a risk either emotionally or personally, and we don't dare a little bit, then of course we're going to have a very mediocre life. We're going to be a timid soul, as Theodore Roosevelt would say, that knows neither victory nor defeat. And so we need to understand the importance of daring and creating something to strive for. Now, the second element of personal leadership is trust. And trust is a massively important commodity in life. And I really want to touch on this for a moment, because trust is one of those things that, is hard won and easily lost. And we talk a lot about the ABCs of trust. We talk about ability, behavior, and character. And the ability is, being able to do the job really well, the behaviors that are consistent and congruent. And of course, C is about character, our values, our ethics, our morals. Okay. So we want to be making sure that the ABCs, the ability, the behavior, and the character, are in alignment with who we are and who we want to be. If we're going to show up in our best self, whether we're leading ourselves, whether we're leading others, or we're building teams and developing other leaders, we've got to be able to build trust. And Stephen Covey said it in one of his books around the relationship bank account, where you make deposits into the relationship bank account over time, you build up a healthy bank balance in inverted commas, then suddenly you might not behave in a way that's great or whatever it happens to be. And that's a withdrawal from that bank account. And so you want to make sure that in banking terms, you've got enough money in the account, or you've made enough deposits, so that that withdrawal doesn't send you into the red. And it's exactly the same with trust. We see it in our work every single day. If we've got a patient who we've seen for 20 years, we've done work consistently that's been brilliant for 20 years, then all of a sudden we have a filling fail, then they're more likely to be okay with that, because there's this long history of deposits into the trust bank account. And so that's what we're talking about there. Now, when it comes to personal leadership, the next thing we need to talk about is personal effectiveness. We need to be able to get things done. We need to be effective in our role. And what that comes back to is understanding priorities, knowing the things that make a difference. And, who do I need to be? I need to be the person that knows what I need to be focusing my energy on, and then dedicating my energy to those things, not bobbing around like a cork on the ocean, getting swayed from one side to another. Again, really, really important that we use our time well, we use our energy well, and we are really focused on the things that move the needle in whatever element of our life we're talking about. If we're talking about our health and I'm leading myself, maybe I need to be the person that when I go shopping, I'm not buying all sorts of sweet treats, and so that when I get home, I know that I'm, going to be able to eat effectively. I'm going to be able to have a great diet that supports my health goals, or whatever it happens to be. And then, of course, we need to be able to be very clear about communication skills. Great leaders are great communicators. And sometimes if we're communicating with ourselves, in that primary level of leadership, it's really about being clear about our self-talk, making sure we've got a great self-image, a healthy self-image. But equally, when we're communicating with others, it's about really listening. It's really about, who do I need to be? I need to be a great listener. I need to listen to myself. I need to listen to others. I need to listen to the environment of which I'm part. And so again, really, really key. And then of course, when we move to the next section of the periodic table about leading the way, we need to have clarity around the values in our life. And I was very fortunate enough to have Dr. John Demartini on our podcast, and I'd encourage you to go back and listen to that episode if you haven't already. But I was also really grateful to have the opportunity to bring Dr. Demartini into our Practice Max community to do some training and coaching there. And one of the things that he speaks about, a lot is the importance of knowing your values and not buying into other people's values, not thinking that value is somehow more important than another value, but being authentic and true to our own values and owning those values. And of course, having a clear vision for your life as well. So we need to have a vision for ourselves. We need to be clear about our own values and stick with our values, not get caught up with what other people think are the best things for ourselves. So we need to have that clarity in our own lives. So we need to be the person that's clear. Equally, when it comes to leading the way, we need to be the sort of person that has the ability to set goals and achieve goals. And there's been a study from, I think it was Harvard, maybe Stanford School of Business, and they surveyed a graduating class from the MBA program, and they found that only 3% of students actually wrote down their goals. And some years later, they went back to see who'd achieved what. And not surprisingly, the 3% of those students who wrote down their goals in that final year of their university degree achieved infinitely more, a magnitude of several times more than the 97% combined. And so the ability to set a goal, the ability to work towards that goal and ultimately achieve a goal is really, really important. So again, really, key. And of course, related to that is the ability to focus. And we've spoken about that a little bit already. The ability to narrow your focus, the ability to influence others, and the ability to really kind of bring your energy, effort to a point and get those things done. Then, of course, when it comes to empowering other people, if we're the sort of person that, has set these goals to grow our practice, if we're the sort of person that says, this year I want to really finally step back out of the clinical role to a degree, then I'm going to need to empower other people. And that means, we need to be in the business of helping other people grow. And therefore, we need to become adept at coaching and mentoring. If we're going to grow other leaders, if we're going to grow other people's skills, we need to really understand coaching and mentoring and the difference between the two. Mentoring is a process that really allows us to be able to say, look, based on my experience or based on the work I've done with other people, I suggest you do A, B, and C. Coaching, on the other hand, is predicated on the understanding and the belief that the person you're working with actually has all the answers within them. And the coach's role is to ask good questions, well thought out, well structured questions in a way that unlocks those answers. So it's a bit like a combination lock, rolling into the right combination, and everything unlocks from there. Now, there is a place for both coaching and mentoring. Mentoring is very, a bit more didactic, but equally, if someone really doesn't have the knowledge base or the experience base to be able to draw from, then mentoring is really essential. But otherwise, coaching can be a more powerful experience because the insights that are created through coaching are profound. And if you're going to be leading other people, if you're going to empower other people, if you're going to create leverage in your business, then you're going to want to learn how to coach and mentor. Now, my view is that part of the role for all of our businesses is to become training institutions. If you want to grow a business, we need to have some skills, bringing people into the practice, training them up, managing them, and helping them become proficient and productive in their role in a fairly brisk time frame. Then coaching and mentoring are going to be really, really important. And that's going to tie into recruitment and being able to position people in their roles as well. And then, of course, we need to be able to delegate effectively. I want to be the person who's able to delegate. So if I'm going back to that be, do, and have, if I want to create more time in my life I need to be the sort of person who becomes adept and proficient at delegating. And delegating is not abdicating. Delegating is not just handing off a task and saying, go for it, Mary or Peter or whoever. It's yours, run with it. Delegating is really important because we've got to be able to train and equip the people that we're delegating to so that we set them up for success. And so when it comes to all of this, we want to be able to, again, coming back to the people piece, we want to be able to show them how to do something. We want to be able to give them feedback loops and check what's happening there. And of course, the equipping process is if I'm doing it now, then I'm going to continue to do it the next time and you're going to look over my shoulder. Then you're going to do it and I look over your shoulder. Then you're going to have a go at doing it yourself. Then ultimately, we're going to ask you to teach someone else. And of course, you learn so much more about doing something when you teach it. So again, we want to be able to delegate and equip in a really productive and effective way. So if you want to create time, if that was one of your goals for 2021, I want to create more time in my life, then we're going to need to be able to be the sort of person who delegates very, very well. Then, of course, if we're talking about the J in the leadership periodic table, manage the journey, we've got to be able to be the sort of person that plans for the year, has a budget in place, does a financial forecast, understands what needs to be occurring at a business level and across that detail. We, of course, then need to be able to implement that plan. And of course, very candidly, implementation is the difference between failure and success. A good idea is only ever as good as its implementation. And so we need to be the sort of people who are able to take an idea, implement it, and get the results. And along the way, we need to be able to solve problems because problems will inevitably arise. And we're going to need to be able to be effective at decision making and knowing what our criteria are when we make a decision. So setting up some rules of the game, making sure that we have some parameters or criteria about what we will do, what we won't do, and putting in place those sorts of things. And of course, above all else, as we're going through the year, we want to be able to track our progress, measure how we're going, review things, and adjust and change course if we need to. So if we think about this, these are all the sorts of things that we need to be in order to do the things that we need to do so that we can have the things that we want to have. And as you've gone through last week's session, which was about getting clear about, what you want from the year, building out that plan, then of course this week is about who do I need to be and what do I need to be doing in order to have those things that I spoke about last week. So I hope you find that really helpful. I'm going to ask you to take some notes. Now, if you're a dental practice owner and you're looking for some tools or some strategies or some tips and trainings, head across to the Savvy Dentist Facebook group. There is a ton of training material there. There's some resources there that are free of charge, and you can jump into the group and ask questions, get them answered, but importantly, utilize those videos there. We've got a pro tip video series there, which is, 27, 28 videos, and they're going to give you lots of insights around your practice. Now, equally, if you're the sort of practice owner who wants to get on the fast track and get things going in 2021, I invite you to reach out to us at Savvy Dentist. All you need to do is either head across to savvydentist.com/call and fill in the form there, and we'll organize a call for us to sit on a Zoom session together. That's you and me, and we'll map out your strategy, your plan, and get you on your way for 2021. If you don't want to do that, you can also just call us at the office, and we can, if you don't want to go online, that is, call us 1300 66 83 84 and book a time, and we can do that then as well. But at the very least, come and join us in the Facebook group, take hold of those resources, implement them. But I hope you found some real value in thinking about this be, do, and have today, because again, who do we need to be in order to do the things we need to do so that we can have the things that we need to have? It is a simple model that's easy to understand, but not as easy to implement. So I'm going to encourage you to think that through and, of course, take action upon it. So that's it from me this week. I hope you're all really well, and I look forward to seeing you for part 3 of our Practice Success series next time. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green. For more free tools and resources, join the free Facebook group. Visit drjessegreen.com/Facebook. And for more episodes, visit drjessegreen.com/savvydentist.